This one's for anyone who doesn't think they have the skills to actually quit their job and 10x their income on their own, so they're considering working with a partner. Well, my co-host is going to tell you after 400 deals, he wished he didn't start with a partner, and instead, he wished he would have JV'd in order to sell those deals for the top dollar, but having no strings attached to anyone long-term that felt unfair when one person was working harder than the other.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. I am your host today, Ryan Haywood, and a little bit about me. I started wholesaling back in 2019. I took a 30-day wholesaling challenge. I got my first deal locked up in 14 days and went on to make $8,500 on my first deal. What could have been $16,000 ended up being $85,000. $8,500. It's a part of the story I don't elaborate on, but that's what I want to talk to you about today. Today, I want to talk about my biggest mistake in wholesaling and how that happened, how it unfolded. I want to kind of give you the background on the mistake and then how I overcame the mistake and how you can also prevent making the same mistake. When I first started, I signed up to do a 30-day wholesaling challenge that was hosted by Max Maxwell. My wife had found, she was the one that was active on social media. At the time, I didn't have Facebook. I didn't have Instagram. I was very much so anti those platforms. I did not enjoy the social media aspects. So Megan had been sitting there, and one of our acquaintances or online friends, social media friends, we knew them in person, but there was not like we hung out all the time. It wasn't like that kind of thing. But they had posted that they had done a wholesaling challenge, and that they were wholesaling real estate, and that they had been able to leave their 9-to-5 job. And at that time, most of you have already known this part of the story, but at that time, my 9-to-5 job was on very unsteady ground. We were about to have a child and things just were not comfortable. So I was looking for a way out, and Megan had found this option in wholesale. And so I signed up for the 30-day wholesaling challenge and started the process. And I had reached out to that acquaintance and told him, hey, I've started this 30-day wholesaling challenge. And then I would check in with him as like a means of accountability or bounce ideas and questions off of them. But when I got my first deal opportunity, what had happened is I'd gone through the process of telling people what I was doing, telling friends, hey, I am looking for distressed properties. And that was actually how the first deal came to me. I had a friend that was at church that said, hey, I know this property's in bad shape. The seller wants to get rid of it. And so here's their number. I called, I had that conversation, but I was unsure of my own ability to do this alone. And so I assumed, I'm like, okay, let me see if I can get this acquaintance in on this deal to help me through this process, because I wasn't comfortable in my knowledge base. I needed some accountability. I needed some hand-holding. And so I asked, I've got this opportunity. Can you help me through it? And he graciously said yes. Now, it wasn't for free. I told him, if you'll help me out with this, we'll split whatever we make on this deal 50-50. And so he was on board with it. He jumped on the call with me with the seller. We talked through the negotiation. I had went and looked at the property. I went and took pictures. I gave my feedback. And so we called the seller together, and I kind of stepped out and let him lead the conversation on, here's what we think we can make an offer for. And it was all great information for me to pay attention to. It was always good for me to hear how that conversation was going, because I was nervous and I felt like, okay, if I can have somebody help me through this, it will be better for me. And I will say that knowing what I know now, that the right path here would have been to do what we call a JV, or a joint venture, okay, where I solidify a deal, but I need help finding a buyer for it. So I would present you a JV opportunity that you would help me find a buyer, and in return, you could acquire 50% of the wholesale fee. Now, I didn't know that that was an option. I didn't know that a JV was a term or even something that you could use, so I kind of just made it a partnership, if you will. And so we ended up getting the deal done. We made $16,000 on the assignment. So we got the property under contract. We sold the property. It was a $16,000 assignment. And then we split that to where we would both get, and it was actually $17,000, but we both walked away with $8,500. I felt so accomplished. I felt so relieved that I had gotten this done, because again, I was leaving my 9-to-5 job and pursuing real estate wholesaling and had no clue what I was doing, but we got it done. And what I had, after we got that deal done, I was like, man, that was easy. And I was like, why don't we just continue this on? And I'll go and get deals. You can help me with marketing, and you can help me with this. What had ended up happening, so we verbally agreed. Nothing was ever written down, which was another mistake, another misstep, is like not clarifying each person's responsibility in this quote-unquote partnership. We just said, I made the mistake of saying, I'll just split everything with you 50-50. I sold out so much money. Going back, now I'll still say there was value in it because I did learn some things, but at a certain point, I started to see, okay, I don't think that I need this, and I feel like I'm doing too much for what I'm getting in return. And some examples of that, there were moments where I'd be working on a deal, I'd be cold calling, I'd be driving for dollars, I'd be marketing, and I wasn't accounting for my marketing expenses. I wasn't accounting for the time and the energy that I was putting in solidifying the deal. And so I'd get the deal, and I'd been the one that spent all the time cold calling. I had been the one that went on the appointment. I had been the one that had drove for dollars to get the lead. But then I started getting to stages in this opening period where I was finding buyers too, just in conversation, just in telling my friends what I was doing. And then they were like, hey, my uncle is buying properties here. You should reach out to him. So reach out to the uncle. Now I've got a buyer. And so the second deal that I did, it was a duplex. It was the first deal that I got from a postcard driving for dollars lead. And I was so excited about it. The guy calls me. He's like, I got a duplex. I want $20,000 for it. And I'm like, great. And so I scheduled a time to go and look at the house. I go and look through. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I have no idea how to come up with an estimated rehab cost. None of that. So I go there and I walk through the property, and I'm like, is there any, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to negotiate. I got to negotiate a better price. I'm like, is there any way you can come off of that 20? And he's like, nope, it's 20, take it or leave it. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And so going back to this quote unquote partner, I go back to him. I'm like, great news. I got another one. They accepted my offer. And his part was like, okay, I'll send him the purchase and sale agreement. I had never seen the purchase and sale agreement. That was another, like, I should have asked, hey, can you show me what you are doing so that I know, what to do in this next step of the process. So he had sent the purchase and sale. We got it under contract. But then in conversation with my friend who had an uncle that was buying, I reached out to the uncle. I'm like, I've got a duplex under contract. I'm going to assign this for $40,000, which would have been a $20,000 assignment. And he's like, let's do a video walkthrough. So I go and I do a FaceTime video walkthrough with this guy. He likes what he sees. He says, okay, let's get it under contract. I'll take it at $40,000. Now, all of this happened within the first 30 to 45 days of doing this. So that's a $20,000 assignment and a $17,000 assignment. My first 30 to 45 day window, if you're doing math, that's $37,000 that I could have made had I been doing this by myself. I agreed to split, again, 50%. And it's sad to acknowledge this, because the mistakes that I was making was not giving myself a chance to know how to do the process in its entirety, and the confidence that I can do this. I could get the purchase and sale agreement signed, and I already had the buyer. The buyer wanted it, and so we got our second deal done, and I made $10,000 on that one. And this pattern continued. I had a deal, then another seller had reached out with another duplex, and so I went and I walked through this duplex. This time, though, this acquaintance partner went with me and did the walkthrough initially, and we made the offer together. So this kind of felt like it was like, okay, we're working together. That's good. But again, like, we got it under contract, and I found the buyer. So it's just more realization, and it started to open up. I'm like, man, I am doing a lot more and relinquishing 50% of this. And so again, this third deal that I did, it was another $20,000 assignment on a duplex. So that's, for those who are still doing the math, that's $57,000. That all happened in the first 60 days. That is equal. In the first 60 days, I equaled what I made as a salary over 12 months in my previous job.
Interrupting this episode to celebrate Cody Schaefer, who's seeking financial freedom. You might remember him from episode 17 of this podcast, where he had done $30,000 on his biggest real estate wholesaling deal by actually Uber Eats driving and looking for rundown houses while he was delivering food. So the money he made from Uber Eats, he would put back into his marketing. So he used the DealMachine app to actually pin a house and look up the owner and send mail to any rundown homes. Now, we have an update. He just closed a $58,000 deal. So congrats to you, Cody. And if you guys are looking to get out of your corporate job and you want to take action on what you're learning in this podcast towards financial freedom, check out the DealMachine app. We've got a special promotion for you if you go to DealMachine.com/pod, where you'll actually get to send your first 35 postcards for free. And so we typically recommend finding about 300 rundown homes and sending a postcard to each one of them in order to start getting some calls back that could turn into a deal. So DealMachine.com/pod if you want to get your hands on the app that's helped Cody make $58,000. And congrats again to you, Cody.
But I relinquished half of that because of my own fear of not knowing how to do the process in its entirety. But what I started to realize was that I was doing the whole process, and like, looking back at it now, the things that I wasn't doing are the things that I pay a TC or a transaction coordinator to do. And right now, like, I pay a transaction coordinator $300 to send the contract and send the assignment and send that stuff to the title company. And back then I was paying 50% of the deal to do that. That was a huge mistake. That is the mistake that I'm trying to present to you so that you do not make that same mistake. And again, JVing with somebody and partnering with somebody is not a bad idea. But there's a difference between JV and partnering. Like, having an agreement written out that, okay, this specific property I need to find a buyer for, I'm going to partner with you. If you find a buyer, that's a big piece. If you find a buyer, you will get 50% of the deal. No big deal. But you're not coming into an agreement where every deal then is 50-50. And I will never forget the moment when, like, I think we all went out to dinner. We were having conversation, and they were liking this agreement. And they should have. I'm like, I was a workhorse, but I started to feel like I was the workhorse. Like I was doing a majority of the work and only bringing 50% of the deals of that deal home, which started to make me feel like I'm not comfortable with this. And other symptoms started happening. Like I would reach out, and it seemed like I wasn't getting, when I would call, I'm like, man, I'm giving up a lot of money. I would expect a phone call to be answered quickly, and like my questions and concerns, like as I'm doing this process of deal finding and deals are coming up and questions that I needed answered are coming up, and I'm not getting the response that I would expect. And so it kind of leaves me out in limbo. And the reality is you need to respond quickly on these deals so that you can get them under contract. That kind of response was not being met. And so we quickly identified that, hey, this is a lot more beneficial to them than it is for me, and we had to make a change. Later on, I had found another lead, and I had reached out to the guy that we were quote unquote partnering with, and I said, hey, I think I'm going to do this deal that I've got right now. I'm going to do this by myself because I really need to prove to myself that A, I can do it, and I need to understand the process from top to bottom. Like, it's not fair for me to be doing this and not know the process of getting the assignment, the agreement signed, and all of that. So this is actually, it's so crazy how it worked out. So this deal, I go and look at the property, I make an offer, the seller accepts the offer, I get them to sign a purchase and sale agreement. Then I start marketing to find a buyer. And coincidentally, I find another person that's like, hey, I got a buyer for this. Let's do a JV. I'm like, okay, we'll do a JV. Again, I did not know that there should be paperwork, that there should be a written agreement saying that you're going to get this, I'm going to get this. It was verbal. It was a verbal, okay, my assignment fee is, I think I was like at $10,000. I'll get my assignment fees $10,000. We'll split it 50-50. Okay, well then in the process of the deal, things started changing. When the buyer was like, well, I've got a real estate attorney that can close this deal at their house or at their office, and it's saves me on closing costs. I'm like, okay, great. We get to like closing day, and I'm like, again, I'm not like doing it at a title company would have saved me some headaches because I felt like I got swindled down. Like I get my check and it was like $5,000. I'm like, what happened? Well, there's this fee and there's this fee and there's this fee and there's no explanation. And there was no way to figure this thing out. But the JV partner that I had on this deal just thought we were getting $10,000 and that we were going to split to $10,000. So I get this deal done. I end up only bringing like $7,000 in, which was a lot less than the 10 that I had agreed to do. And so I quickly wrote a check to this JV partner that we didn't have a written agreement together on, and it was less than he was expecting $5,000. And it made him mad. And he's like, look, you told me I was going to get 50% of the $10,000. And I'm like, yes, but at the closing, we only actually got this. And he was like, yeah, but you told me you were going to give me this. And so it was another really bad experience. And this, guys, was the first time I was doing a JV by myself. Like, I didn't have someone else walking through doing parts of it or offering guidance on any of it. It was just, I'm getting the contract. I found the title closer. I had this guy reached out and said, I got a buyer. I'm like, cool, let's get the contract signed. But just not knowing how to navigate this issue of JVing, it really put me in a bad position with that guy, and I broke some trust. And it's taken some time to build that trust back. Thankfully, like, I think we're beyond that, and everything is good now. But that was an experience that, again, could have been alleviated had I known that there is a JV agreement, that you write out your expectations on what you can get, and what you're getting in return. And I'll say it's very important to specify when you're making an agreement that you're getting 50% of the assignment fee. I would not suggest putting a dollar amount in there, because if the assignment fee is not what is expected and something happens and there's a lien that needs to be covered and your assignment fee comes down for any reason, you don't want to be held paying and actually losing money on a deal or not making more. In that situation, I did end up paying them the $5,000, which meant that I made about $2,000 on the deal, which sucked because I'd put in all the work on finding the deal, going on the appointment, making the offer, all of that, and I only made $2,000 on that deal, and I should have made a lot more than that. But again, experiences is how you grow, and so that was another learning curve. From that point on, though, I knew how to do this. I knew that if I was going to do this again, I was going to need a JV agreement. So I started looking for one, and I found one. And here's my give to you today. If you want a JV agreement, if you go to DealMachine.com/JV, you will get the agreement that I have been using on every deal. Anytime I find a JV partner, which we will look for JV partners. If we can't move a deal, if there's a deal that we can't find a buyer for, we start reaching out and we present this JV contract, the same JV contract you can get at DealMachine.com/JV, that you can use. And that right there will save you from making the mistake that I made. And I hope that you're in a position that you haven't made these mistakes yet. But if you have, there's a way out of it. And there's a clean way out of it. The plain and simple thing is that you are capable of doing the wholesale process by yourself from top to bottom. You don't need a partner. That is one thing that actually I remember going to a real estate conference early on in this thing too with that partner. They went with us to this event, and we're sitting there, and the guest speaker gets up and he's like, talking about the mistakes that you can make in real estate. And the number one mistake is having a partner. And I'm like, I look over at Megan and I'm like, crap, like, why are we already making that mistake? And I didn't know, but it started to reveal itself the further we went in to this situation. We started to realize, man, like, it's just not fair to be giving away half of everything that we do. And it's not fair to that other person as well. Like, the reality is like, you're not learning to become independent by yourself. Like, you're relying on other people, and that's not fair. It wasn't fair either way. And I want everybody that's listening, if you're trying to leave your 9-to-5, you're trying to gain financial independence, there is a way to do this. There's a way to do it on your own. And I hope that this story has helped. I hope that I've been able to reveal to you some issues and mistakes that you can come across when you're doing the process of joint venturing. Make sure you get this contract signed. Make sure you outline what you are getting in return for finding a buyer. Don't make the same mistake that I made in just agreeing to do 50% of the work for 50% of the assignment fee, because it never works out that way. Still good acquaintances with this person, but after that we went on to do hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deals, and we gained the confidence and gained the knowledge to do it on our own. And once you have that, it is a lot better for you as a person and a business person to know and have confidence that you are capable of doing this stuff without the help of other people. It's good to have educators walk you through things. It's good to have people coaching you through that. I'll also say that finding coaching or getting in a real estate group that other wholesalers were in, that you kind of bounce these ideas off of, that would have helped. But you're going to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Making mistakes just indicates that you're learning. So again, thank you guys so much for following the Deal Machine Real Estate Investing Podcast. I hope you've learned something from this. If you have, or if you haven't, please like, share, and leave a comment below. We would love to continue to bring you good content, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Hey guys, use that JV agreement if you have a deal and then you're wondering how you can sell that. Now, if you want to find your own buyers, Ryan did an episode number 77 where he talks about finding high quality buyers in order to sell it yourself without having a JV.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.